Hi boys and girls, I hope you're doing well today. I just wanted to share with you a little bit about measurement to start us off. So I know yesterday for homework, you had to compare some objects and see which one was heavier and which one was lighter. So I have some objects for you here today, and I want you to think about the weight of the objects. How much something weighs is how heavy it is or how light it is. So my first two objects, I have a speaker and I have a puzzle piece. Which one of these do you think weighs more? If you guess the speaker, you are correct. The speaker is heavier than the puzzle piece. Great job. My next objects are a cookie cutter and a remote. Which object do you think is heavier? If you guess the remote, you are correct. The remote is heavier than the cookie cutter. The cookie cutter is lighter than the remote. Great job. Next, I have a pony and a pacifier. Which object do you think is lighter? Which object do you think weighs less, is lighter? If you guessed pacifier, you are correct. The pacifier is lighter than the pony. The pony is heavier than the pacifier. Great job. Next, I have two K-cups that have coffee in them. What about these? Which one is heavier and which one is lighter? It's kind of a trick question. They are equal. They weigh the same amount. If we were on a balance scale, if something's heavy, it would go down. If it's light, it would go up. These would stay the same. They are equal. Can you say that word? Equal. That means they weigh the same amount. Great job. Next, I have a container of full paint and a paintbrush. Which object is lighter or weighs less? The paintbrush. The paintbrush is lighter than the can of paint. The can of paint is heavier than the paintbrush. Great job. I have a book and a marker. Which object is heavier, the book or the marker? If you said book, you are correct. This book is really heavy, and this marker is really light. Great job. Our last objects, I have a can of pudding, vanilla, the best kind, and a smartwatch. Which object is heavier, the container of pudding or the smartwatch? This one might be kind of hard if you can't feel it. If you said the pudding, you were correct. Now, if this pudding was empty, then this probably would be heavier, but it's a full container of pudding. So the pudding is heavier than the smartwatch. The smartwatch is lighter than the pudding. Great job. Now we're going to talk a little bit about recycling. On April 22nd, which is Wednesday, we are going to celebrate Earth Day. All of the great things that we can do to help save our Earth. So one of those things I wanted to talk to you about today is the word recycle. It says, why should I recycle? Have you heard of that word before? We recycle at home, and we're going to read to find out what that word means. This book was written and illustrated by Mike Gordon. Why should I recycle? In my family, we recycle our garbage. We return things so they can be used again. So it looks here like they're at a recycling center. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's where you can put all of your glass bottles and your cans, and they'll put them in this machine and it turns them into new things that they can use. We didn't always recycle. We used to throw everything away. Look at this trash can. It's full of stuff. On our way to school, we always pass Mr. Jones's house. Mr. Jones is our teacher. One day we saw him putting a very special box with cans, bottles, and papers by the gate. What are you doing? What do you think he's doing with those cans? If you said recycle, I bet you're correct. This box is for recycling. All these things are taken away and used again, said Mr. Jones. What's recycling? I'll explain at school. In class, Mr. Jones asked us what we did with our trash. We put it in the garbage can. It's just old garbage. Mr. Jones said garbage contained lots of useful things that can be recycled or used again. So that's what that word recycled means. You can use it again. Why should I recycle? Can you think about that? Why should you recycle? Mr. Jones took the class to a recycling center. It had separate containers for bottles, cans, plastic, clothes, and paper. What do you think happens to all the glass that goes in here? Asked Mr. Jones. It all gets broken down to make new shiny bottles. And guess what happens to all the cans that go in here? Asked Mr. Jones. What do you think happens to all of those cans? They get melted down to make new metal things such as bikes and scooters. Wow! And what about paper and plastic that goes in here and here? Mr. Jones asked. The paper gets shredded and used to make new books and comics. Think about our recycle bin at school. Remember how we talked about how we don't put food and trash from our food in the recycling bin? We only put paper. We always had that thing pretty full at school, didn't we? And then somebody would go on the announcements and say, the recycling crew's here. And then they would take our recycling out. The paper gets shredded and is used to make new books and comics. All these things come from garbage we just throw away. This plastic can be used to make all kinds of things, including clothes. You might be wearing some, said Mr. Jones. So why waste waste? Most of the garbage we put in the trash can get buried in dumps that spoil the countryside. It's good to recycle as much as you can, said Mr. Jones. So what else can we recycle? Clothes, books, toys you don't want can all be taken to the secondhand store, explained Mr. Jones. The food we buy at the supermarkets come in packages that can often be used again. Don't waste, Mom. I told Mom and Dad about our trip to the recycling center. Now we buy recycled things at the store. Recycled paper helps save trees. We always recycle the plastic bags too. We brought our own bags, thanks. Have you ever done that at the store? Brought your own bags to put your groceries in? If so, you're recycling or reusing. We also recycle everything at home. Fruit and vegetable peelings get recycled into our new compost heap. They put all those in here, and then they can grow new things. The compost helps my mom's prized vegetables to grow. Look at that vegetable. Zucchini, tomato, and it looks like a pickle. Now we recycle so much garbage, there's hardly any left to put in the can. Recycling is kind to nature. It saves money and it's fun. Okay. So, can you think of something you've recycled in the last week? I want you to look up here. I have our 3 R's. These are important to talk about when we're talking about saving the earth and Earth Day on April 22nd. So this first one is reduce. How can we reduce the amount of waste or the amount of pollution on our earth? This middle one is reuse. How can we reuse things so that we're not being wasteful? How could we reuse things? And I'm going to share some pictures with you in just a minute. And the last one is recycle, what we just talked about. What do you have at home, or what did we use at school that we could recycle and turn into something new? Okay, so let's look at these. This first one I have is a droplet of water. And this one stands for turning water off, turning our faucets off, maybe when we're brushing our teeth. I know I like to put a little water on my toothbrush when I brush my teeth on my toothpaste. But it's important to shut that water off, that we don't let it run the whole entire time. What do you think I would put that under? Would I put it under reduce, reuse, or recycle? If you said reduce, you were correct. We're trying to reduce the amount of water that we use so we can save the water. So I'm going to put it right under here. Next, we have a shirt. I just did this with my daughter's clothes. They had a lot of clothes that they didn't wear anymore or didn't fit them. So we decided to give some of that clothes to their cousins that were a little bit younger so that they could wear the clothes again. So which R would that be? Would that be reduce, reuse, or recycle? Reuse, right? We use the clothes and we're finished with it, so we're gonna let somebody else rewear the clothes. That's a great way to help our environment, because then we're not just throwing it in the trash where it would have to get buried at the landfill. We're letting somebody else reuse it. Oh, a can of soda. If you're done drinking a can of soda, what could you do with that? Would you reduce it, reuse it, or recycle it? If you said recycle, you are correct. We can recycle it, and then at the recycling center, they'll burn it down or melt it down into making something new. Great. These two kind of go hand in hand. We have a light bulb and a light switch. Which R would this go under? If you're turning off the lights when you leave a room, which my kids at home need a lot of reminders, and they hear me say, don't forget to turn off the light if you're not in the room. Reduce, right? That costs money, right? It takes energy to light up a room. We have to use light bulbs and our light switch. If we turn that off, we can save money by reducing the amount of energy that we use. Good. Next, we have a book. I just finished reading this one book that I had. And so I'm going to give it to my sister-in-law. If I'm done with it and I'm going to gift it to somebody else or give it to somebody else, I'm reusing it, right? So that would go right in the middle here. It's always good to reuse things or pass things along to somebody else if you're finished with them. Next, I have a plastic bottle. Maybe like a bottle of water. That would be recycled. They can melt that plastic down and turn it into something else. Great. I have a paper bag. Do you remember in the story, they talked about when you're at the grocery store, you could bring your own bags. So we really could put that one under reuse if you're reusing a bag, or if it's a paper bag or even a plastic bag, you could recycle it. So I'm gonna put that one right in the middle. How about a newspaper? What could we do with a newspaper when we were finished using it? We could recycle it, right? I'm gonna put that over here. Riding a bicycle. Let's say I decided to ride my bicycle to my mom and dad's house instead of driving to my mom and dad's house. That would be reducing. I would be reducing the amount of pollution, right? And I'd be saving some money because I wouldn't be spending money on gas. And it would be good exercise. So reduce is the one that the bicycle would go under. Great job. We have, it looks like a can of vegetables. That would go under recycle. A faucet. If I'm doing dishes, I don't want to leave the faucet on, right? I want to make sure the faucet turns off. Where would that go? That would go under reduce. Great. And our last one. This could probably go under 2 spots as well. I have a cardboard box. I know at home my kids, when we have boxes, they like to draw and doodle in them and turn them into forts and creation. So a lot of times they like to reuse them. Or I could break down the box if it was made of cardboard and I could recycle it. So I'm going to put that one in the middle too, of reuse and recycle. Great job. So I hope you got a little lesson on the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle. And I hope today you can try to do one of these. Maybe it's turning off the light switches when you're not in the room, or maybe you'll save water somehow. Maybe you can find something at your house that you could reuse, maybe regift to a sibling or a parent, and something that you could recycle. Great job, boys and girls. Take care, and I will be checking in soon. Keep working hard.